In the meantime, we're going to talk more about that subject that we opened the programme with, these damning criticisms of Europe from Donald Trump, and particularly in the interview with Politico news outlet. And we're joined to do that by Amanda Sloat, who is Professor of Practice in the School of Politics, Economics and Global Affairs at the IE University in Madrid. You were also, I think, Amanda, you also worked in the Biden administration at the State Department. First of all, welcome to the programme. Very good to have you with us. We do appreciate your time. I want to start maybe first this national security document then last week, which already talked about Europe losing its way, losing its identity, too many immigrants, and openly suggested that the United States should do what it could to boost nationalist parties, anti-immigration parties within Europe. What do you think that is going to look like? What might we expect from the Trump administration?
I mean, in a way, none of this is new. As I think your report alluded to, J.D. Vance set out a number of these principles already in February in the speech that he delivered to the Munich Security Conference. So I think what is new about this is seeing it in black and white, but it certainly has been a consistent part of what the administration has been speaking and doing, in fact, over the first year of the administration.
Europe's political establishment, it's centre-right. They're really rocked by this. At first, they were silent, but it became hard to ignore. How do you think they should react? We had some of the reactions there in our report from Solange. What should they do? Should they just dismiss it and say, stop interfering? What do you think are the right reactions from the establishment? And then we'll go on to talk about those nationalist parties he hopes to help.
This has been a challenge for European leaders all year. To date, European leaders have largely taken the decision to stay quiet. They have universally sought to flatter the president. They have sought to appease the president. They have certainly engaged in quiet diplomacy with him, but they have not been critical of the democratic backsliding that we have seen in the US. They have not pushed back on the critiques that he has made of them. The question now is whether seeing this in black and white and hearing these words from the president himself is going to start to develop a more forceful reaction from European leaders, as your report has suggested has happened in some quarters. The challenge for European leaders is that they recognize they've got a number of key dependencies on the United States. There has been dependence in terms of security. There certainly are deep economic ties between us. There is dependency in the technology sector, and there is a desire to keep the United States engaged in Ukraine. And so the balancing act that European leaders have tried to find is how they push back on some of these attacks, with these certainly being the most personal and direct ones, with trying to keep the United States on side in the face of some of these very real dependencies.
In the document, it talked about Washington trying to help far-right anti-immigration parties. They don't all want Trump's help. If you look at France, for example, Jordan Bardella, who is the leader of the Rassemblement National, the far-right anti-immigration party here, he, I think, would consider Donald Trump's backing very unhelpful in France. Trump is not liked, even amongst far-right voters, and certainly not amongst any voters he might be trying to reach out to. But if you look at Germany, they are quite keen, probably, on the idea. Is Trump even aware of any of this?
Who knows what Trump is personally aware of, but I think you're right that it's a double-edged sword for the administration. By nature of being a populist party, you are going to be France first and Germany first, and so you are going to have a more complicated set of engagements with countries like the United States. Certainly, we have seen conversations in the US about supporting, about commenting on some of the judicial proceedings that have happened, for example, in countries like France and Romania. But we have also seen a number of these countries or parties and countries that are trying to actively support their working class base be affected by a number of the tariff policies and economic chaos that we have seen coming out of the administration's policies. And so it's going to be hard for them to fully identify with those as well. So I think that is why we've actually seen a quite muted response from some of these far right parties in support of that. Now, the question is going to be whether they can find alignment on other things, especially in terms of very hardline views on immigration, for example.
Why is Trump doing this, do you think? Why is Washington doing this? Do they genuinely care about Europe and think it is losing its way, even though Europe can look after itself? Or would they quite like Europe to fail?
I think the United States, under the Trump administration, is trying to put themselves in a very strong economic position. And so they have been targeting what they have not liked within the European Union, especially in terms of regulation of tech companies. There have long been complaints by American presidents, going back to Eisenhower, in fact, of Europe not paying enough in terms of its own defense. But Trump in the first term and now is certainly making much more of that a centerpiece of his campaign, in part to be able to reduce some of the expenditure, in theory, on its capacities in Europe, to bring them back home or refocus them elsewhere. What is new in this term of the Trump administration has been these attacks on culture in Europe in a way that aligns with what has been happening in the United States. There has been a strong resurgence of focus on so-called traditional values. There has been this so-called focus on free speech. But the irony, of course, is that the Trump administration is criticizing in Europe what it is trying to do in many cases back home.
And do you think Europe should make that more clear to Donald Trump? Or should Europe just accept that, this formerly Western alliance is over? There is now a big rift, which will certainly delight Russia.
It certainly does delight Russia. I don't think the Transatlantic Alliance is over completely. Our countries have long been bound by history, by culture. We still have the world's largest trade and investment relationship. We still have a very strong military alliance. And it does not seem, despite the strong rhetoric, that the Trump administration wants to completely end that. However, we are seeing very real, very targeted, very personal attacks on Europe, including its leaders and its population. In my own view, Europe should be pushing back more strongly than what it has been. I recognize the very real dependencies that Europe is dealing with. I hope that Europe takes this as a wake-up call to really double down on making progress on reducing those dependencies in the full range of sectors, from defense to technology. But I think Europe has a responsibility to speak up on behalf of democracy, both in terms of the democratic practices that it has here in Europe and also the challenges to democracy that we're seeing in the United States. I think it's become very clear with the 28-point plan, with the national security strategy, and now with Trump's comments, that this approach of staying silent and deferential is not working for Europe.
Okay, well, we're out of time, I'm afraid. Very good to talk to you. Thank you so much for your thoughts and ideas on that. Amanda Sloat speaking to us there from IE University in Madrid. Thank you so much for your thoughts.